The 6-month suspension of one-time NBC anchorman Brian Williams received for fabricating and exaggerating stories is supposed to be up in August. But it's a crucial time for NBC, as its annual upfronts, where you show advertisers what you've got, are due in May, which means Brian Williams will either be part of that program or not. And the betting is not. Brian Williams disappeared in February as the face of NBC News after admitting he misremembered details about his helicopter coming under fire in Iraq in 2003.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago.
What followed was withering press coverage, prompting NBC to launch an internal investigation into other Williams exaggerations. This while he sits on the bench for 6 months.
Just let the process play out. That's what I really believe.
Tom Brokaw, who preceded Williams, isn't saying much. But according to a piece in this month's Vanity Fair, there's no love lost between the two men.
If you do it another 12 years, you'll be there as long as I've been.
That now appears to be very unlikely. May is Upfronts month, where the networks show advertisers what's in the hopper for the fall, both entertainment and news.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News.
Meanwhile, NBC Nightly News has fallen to second place behind ABC's David Muir, a slide that started while Williams was still at the helm. Ultimately, Williams' future lies in the hands of a new boss, once an old ally. Andy Lack has a tough call to make. Boy, I wouldn't want to be Andy Lack. I know they were very close. They worked together in a previous iteration at NBC News. And I'm sure Brian Williams has appealed to him as a friend and a colleague and said, you know, I can do this, I can restore my credibility. But I think there's just too much around this at this point. And this internal investigation by Richard Esposito, who's an investigative reporter at NBC, has not come out yet. Elements of it have been leaked. But it appears as though there's going to be a lot more of this. It's just going to come cascading out, and I think the writing is on the wall.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. There's a lot of elements that come into play. I think Lester Holt's success in stepping in as anchor is going to be a major factor. How, if we go that 6 months down the road, how do you say to Lester Holt, okay, it's time for you to go back to the weekend here? I think that'll be a tough thing for NBC to try to confront. My guess is that they won't confront it, that Lester Holt will hold on to that seat.
I think that I'm surprised that Brian Williams' fate has hung in the air as long as it had. I thought there would have been a negotiated departure by now. I can't imagine that he'll be back. He does not have any credibility at this point. And the other thing is, his suspension, I have not really seen much in the way of any sort of a media feeding frenzy in terms of trying to check out many of the other claims that he made. But if NBC tries to bring him back, that will begin. Again, and there's going to, I suspect that we would learn a lot more, and a lot of it would not be flattering to Brian Williams.
Well, let me just say that they could bring him back, and they could just decide to write it out. It's not at the same level, but I look at Fareed Zakaria and a very extensive report about charges of plagiarism. CNN, we don't believe it. See ya. He's still on the air. And they just wrote it out.
Really damning stuff.
That was, yeah, because that was out and out plagiarism.
And that was an investigation not done by CNN, you know, and it chapter and verse, video, clips, whatever. We don't believe it.
I know, but he doesn't quite rise to the star level.
That's what I said. It's not the same level. But I'm saying that I have seen other instances where a star, if somebody believes they're a star, and maybe, you know, Andy's got the personal thing, they just decide, we're writing it out, and we'll just take all the slings and arrows.
You know, one of the oh, go ahead.
No, that's all. Yeah.
One of the people who you see getting blamed a lot in this story is Deborah Turnus, who came over from the UK to I forget her exact title, but basically to run the news division. One of the things that you hear as a complaint about her is that in England it's totally different, and people aren't making these crazy salaries, and they aren't as important as individual brands as they are here. And I got to say, the more I read about this, the more I wish we could move a little bit in that direction and have the person who's reading off the prompter paid a little less, featured a little less by the network, and have the reporters out in the field and the work they do featured a little more. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just saying maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if it did.
Yeah, the news reader model as opposed to the anchor.
It'd be kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Or it'd be interesting to see how it panned out.
But there are economic reasons not to do that, unfortunately, because they've all cut way back on their reporting staff. So the anchor, by pumping up the anchor, that kind of papers over the cuts that they've made in their reporting.
Also, if you're talking about branding, people brand with something that's, small. They don't do, let me connect with you in some way. That's what, David Muir is doing over at ABC. Very surprisingly that he's, to me, risen to #1 as fast as he has. But they did a calculated move of how to shore up the show around David Muir.
The empathetic anchor.
Well, that's right. And so this is what they got. So I'm not saying listen, his credibility is certainly damaged. And it would also mean that whatever the internal investigation, maybe we never learn all the details. Your point is well taken. Others will take that up and look into it as well. But if they decide they want to write it out,
I think they're going to have to release that investigation.
We'll see.
And I think
stranger things have happened.
CNN. I think we'll see Brian Williams be the Larry King.
Larry King spot. It's very possible.
Yes.